Adele Oliver is an artist from Broome in Western Australia who last year released two singles, Wiley Blue and Angel. Her latest single is Home Tonight, and it leads her EP To Home and Heartbreak. She's been on an East Coast tour. She's on a West Coast tour. There's a fair bit to talk to her about. Hello, Adele.
Hi, Sophie. Thanks so much for having me back on.
It's great to talk to you again, and you keep releasing these lovely songs, so it makes it easy to talk to you. But I'm not going to start with a song. I'm going to start with the Tamworth Country Music Festival, which is in our rearview mirror because it was in January. But I think you had quite a good time there. So please tell me about it.
I did. It was incredible. It started off really strong. I made it there by the Friday and got to Amber Lawrence's showcase, which was really beautiful and wholesome in the shopping mall there. And then we sort of went down a little bit. I ended up losing my voice for a couple days, but we came back strong towards the end, and I got to take up my spot along the Boulevard of Dreams, they call it, and got to get on the back of a Toyota truck. But I think the best part of it for me was I got to network with all of these artists and get to meet even WA artists that we were laughing that we were all the way over on the other side of Australia before we decided to meet. But that was definitely the highlight of it, which was, yeah, getting to spend time with a bunch of people that I hadn't met yet and made some really good friendships.
I think losing your voice is probably part of the course, not only because you're singing a bit, but there's a lot of talking that goes on. Like you mentioned, catching up with WA artists, but you're talking and often in loud environments.
Mm.
So I tend to think, even for me being there, my voice gets a bit husky and I'm not singing.
I know, and I think too there were so many people throughout the week or 2 weeks that you'd hear about how they'd like lost their voice and they got it back again. I think it is almost part of the experience, but it was good in a sense because I did spend a few days silent, but I still got to so much music in that time, and I also made sure I made my way to the opera. There's a couple of development days, and so it was still really worthwhile, even without talking. I was still taking it in and kind of finding my feet in that area and where I might want to go next year and how I might navigate it. So I think it was really cool.
Yeah, I saw that promoted on social media, those APRA development sessions, and they did sound really interesting. I think some of it might have been about touring overseas, and then there was some other things that I thought for artists who were there, that was a really valuable addition to the festival.
Yeah, I think it was, and I guess hard when you're managing gigs around that. But I did see a fair few people come and go in the days, and everything that they presented was incredible. Like there was a session by Fanny Lunston that she really talked about how she's cut out her unique path, but really gave some like valuable insights and ways forward. And then it finished off on the last day with Casey Chambers and Troy Cassadaly doing a songwriting workshop, and that was like the most wholesome, beautiful way to sort of wrap it up. And so it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought that, yeah, that would have been amazing to attend. So you mentioned that you met some WA artists there. Who did you make connections with?
Oh, so Olive May and another guy, Dave Kent, who they're both from down south actually, which yeah, it was just such a funny place to go all the way there and meet up. But it's been really cool. And then I've since, spent a bunch of time with her, with Olive in the southwest and yeah, make plans to kind of do some collabs maybe in the future, even with Dave. And so it's been really cool to form those friendships.
I've interviewed
Yeah.
them both. Yeah, both of
Yeah.
them. Oliver's such a character, and Dave's music, I think, it's great music, but it's also hilarious, some of it.
It's
So
yeah, he's a great character. And yeah, the same. I think he's got there's a quirkiness to it which I love. And Olive is just she's beautiful. So it's been really cool. I got to hang out with Olive the other week, and we went to her mum's house, and she was like, "Oh, just swing past my mum's house on the way to your gig in Yallingup." And we pull into a winery, and I was like, "Olive, I didn't realize you were from winery product pedigree." And she was like, "No, no, no, it's just a garden." Anyway, her mum has this like incredible, almost like botanic garden kind of thing where she lives, and it was so cool. So that was pretty fun getting to hang out with her there.
I also think that's part of the great value of that festival is making those connections because you just don't know what happens down the track. And there's the three of you who've met. I mean, one can foresee a tour of the
Yeah,
three of you, or
yeah.
two, whatever permutation of it, or songwriting, or whatever it is. And even though, yes, the Western Australian land is vast, yeah, there's obviously a way to come together because you've just seen Olin. So you did fit in some East Coast dates while you were over there. I'm curious whether you actually drove over and then were driving up and down.
No, so I flew over and then I had a van and picked that up and drove up to Tamworth. I think the drive from WA over there would have just been probably the straw that broke the camel's back. And it was pretty cool though. The drive, even from Sydney up to Tamworth, was really that was a beautiful drive. I played in two spots, Old Bar and Terrigal on the way up, and I had a fair adventure getting bogged overnight in a field when it was raining, and it was like all of these little things going wrong, but that kind of made the journey really interesting.
I know Terrigal well because I spent a bit of time on the Central Coast growing up. Why did you pick Terrigal? It's obviously a good spot on the coast, but being from WA, you wouldn't necessarily know about it.
No, I actually I had a friend help me out with doing some booking, and their Sad Cowgirls tours worked with me on getting um, those spots along the East Coast, and so I would not have known for Terrigal, but Mumbo Jumbo's Beach House. It seems like quite an iconic little venue, having called through there, and it was such a funny night. It was like rained out in Terrigal. It was the winteriest night, and on the lineup. I think maybe were meant to just have two artists, and then all of a sudden there was three, and it was myself, Angela Rose, and Pitty Vincent. And genre-wise, I think you couldn't have picked three more vastly different genres. I've got me sort of like I was acoustic guitar country, Pitty Vincent are these kind of like hard rock punk band from the Gold Coast, and then Angela Rose, beautiful indie, kind of indie pop rock sort of vibe. And so across the lineup of the night with this like rained out venue. It was pretty funny. So that was a great
Yeah.
way to start.
Yeah, well, and good road stories as well from it.
Yeah.
And I did purposely ask you about driving because driving is a feature in your new song, Home Tonight. And
Yes.
there's a line, it might take longer than a 4-hour drive, but it'll all make sense tonight. So 4 hours, I'm guessing, was the distance between Fitzroy Crossing, where you were living when you wrote it, and Broome, where you are from.
Yeah, that's the one. So it's about a 4 hour drive. I guess depends how heavy your foot is, but it's one of those drives too that has always felt like a bit of a time capsule for me. I don't know if it was just the place that I was in at the time, but even in the other years that I lived in Fitzroy, you always felt like time didn't exist on that drive sometimes.
Right.
And it's a long sort of highway drive. There's no towns in between really. You kind of just are following but the landscape, I suppose, too, is what changes. And so that kind of you're moving through all of these landscape changes and yeah, it's a pretty beautiful drive.
I mean, I'm from New South Wales, born and bred in Sydney, but did a lot of country drives, particularly when I was a kid. Our parents driving us to Queensland, there were always towns. So you saying no towns like for four
Yeah.
hours, and I'm trying to conceptualize what that would look like because even having an hour between towns seemed like a really
Yeah,
long way.
and it is, I think that is a thing that really, and I've noticed it on the Broome to Perth drive as well. You know, like you'll do Broome to Port Hedland is 6 hours and there's maybe two fuel stations kind of thing. And
Right.
that is like a straight long road, but it's something about when you're not passing through towns or stopping off. It does something to you on those kind of drives, I reckon. There's got to be, I don't know what it is, hey? Like maybe it's like a lack of being able to put things into a place. What's that reference? Lack of reference points, maybe?
Mm, yeah. But also, I wonder how it influences your understanding of how music works when you're driving. You know what I mean? If you've got a road trip playlist, for example, and the sorts of songs you might choose, because if you love music, then you tend to put a playlist together. So yeah, I'm really curious. What do you like to listen to at the moment while you're driving?
Well, I think so almost a sidestep to that though too. I think maybe the lack of towns means that you get into a zone when driving where songs come freely. And I think that also feeds into listening to music. I find I listen better to music and I'm more involved in the music when doing those really long drives. And I think at the moment, um, I've been getting back to some older albums and going album start to finish while driving. And before I left Broome, I was given some recommendations of some really great albums that I listened to from start to finish on that drive down. And there was an Emmylou Harris from the 70s or 80s, beautiful album, an early Linda Ronstadt, I always go to John Prine on a long drive as well. I think he really suits a long drive because of how thought-provoking his music is. And then there was some newer albums, definitely the Casey Chambers and Troy Cassar-Daley. Both of those new albums are perfect for a long drive. So I've had lots of good albums to get through.
So you lived in Fitzroy Crossing for 3 years, I think, and I have absolutely no sense of what that area is like. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about it, because clearly it had a huge impact on you.
Yeah, it definitely did. It's inspired probably in some way most of my music. I suppose Fitzroy is like a ruggedness. You're on the really on the edge of the desert, but you've got these beautiful ranges. But it's also freshwater, incredible freshwater country with this beautiful Fitzroy River that runs through it and comes in and out of flood in the wet season. But the main other way to describe it, I would say, is there's sort of a spellbinding kind of magic to it. And I did reference that in the song, but it's something that a lot of people talk about as well. It's a real, I don't know, time moves a bit different there. I used to find when I would spend time in Fitzroy Crossing and come back to Broome that the hustle and bustle of being in town again would just be so much. Like you really get used to a slower pace of life. And yeah, I guess too, small community in sense everyone knows everyone, blessing and a curse in that. So, but I loved it.
So given that, yeah, as you said, Broome is hustle and bustle, Fitzroy is remote. Were there other adjustments you had to make when you moved there? Like, did time actually take on a different sort of form because there was just less going on?
Yeah, I remember when I first got there, it was a big adjustment for me to just slow down and to not, like, I came from being at university in Perth and moved there, and I'm someone that always has I've gotten a lot better as I've gotten older, but I was always someone that would have things going on, multiple things in a weekend, or, seeing people and having a very full schedule. And I've really had to work on that. But I noticed when I was in Fitzroy Crossing at the start, that was like, whoa. Like I got there and everything kind of stopped. And I suppose when you're working there and the jobs that we were doing, everyone really protected their space on the weekends initially. It was sort of go home and sort of hide away, or, once you got embedded in the community, I would go out camping on the weekend and go fishing, but it was still a way slower pace of life. And that was a jarring adjustment that I had to make to just be okay not going anywhere in a weekend sometimes, or just going to the river and not having a million other things that you were doing.
Yeah. And also, I think shedding just that programming that we can get into, like that productivity mindset of, oh,
Yeah.
you have some time, you must do something with it, because otherwise it's wasted time.
Well, I've since accidentally built that up again from being back
Right.
in Broome and I'm reshedding. And so I'm trying to remember back to what it felt like on those weekends in Fitzroy and get back to that. And I've done a bit better at it this year. So.
Because it's interesting. One might think that Broome being a beachside tourist destination, things are laid back, and it doesn't sound like it's that at all.
No, I think once you're there, and I've got all my family there, so even if it isn't just gigs or going out or something that you have to do on the weekend, I could easily fill my days just making sure I see all my family in a weekend or on a weekday. So, but yeah, I think too, Broome sometimes events wise can be so hectic and yeah, chilled out, laid back sort of holiday town, but under that is also a lot going on.
Yeah, because I guess a lot of people who go there are from cities, and they're probably expecting a city level of entertainment when they're there.
Yeah, yeah. And it kind of happens like that in the dry season. Sometimes you go to look at when you're going to possibly put your gig on and you go, oh, all right, I'll just do it once all of that's finished. There's so
Right.
much already locked in. Not all the time,
Okay.
but sometimes.
Yeah, interesting. So the song is about you leaving Fitzroy for Broome to go home, to be home tonight. And there is a line in the song, the writing on the wall was giving me a hint. I'm wondering if the writing was there for a while before you heeded it.
Yeah, definitely. It was one of those environments where I came into a job where um, I heard all these stories from people before me, and I kind of thought initially, oh, that's just that person, the way that all of the things unravel won't be the same for me. And I ignored it definitely. And then the way that I left kind of came about in a similar way, maybe to how other people had left. And I'd realized that it was, part of just a bigger pattern.
Right.
And I think sometimes in, small towns, you end up you are so invested and you're there for that period of time, and then things sometimes do just come to a head and you leave. And I left with open doors still. Like I left on good terms in a lot of ways, but you kind of leave in a hurry sometimes because of, I don't know, I guess it's the intensity of the experience maybe.
Mhm.
Um, and I was lucky that I could just go home. I wasn't sort of having to stay for any period of time. Being locked into a job has always been something that scared me. So yeah, I was really lucky that I could just go home. And it was a weird time as well. It was the beginning of COVID, so there was so much change going on that I was kind of like, oh, I'm gonna get off the island before I'm stuck kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't think any of us had any sense of where we were going or what we were doing. Or we weren't going anywhere much, but you know what I mean? It was
Yeah,
such an odd time. I still think it has effects for everyone because that's such a seismic shift to
yeah.
deal with, especially for musicians. But you released this single as part of an EP on the same date, so it came out as part of that EP. Why did you decide it was the time that the time was right for an EP?
Well, I guess there wasn't as much strategy behind it really. It was just that these songs had been sitting there and I'd protected them for so long because looking at like 20, I think it was 2020 that I left Fitzroy. So it's a fair while after that I'm really getting to being ready to share these songs, because I think what happened too was I left and I came back into this kind of whirlwind romance, and for a while I sort of was a bit scared to share those songs. Like it would almost seem like maybe I was still in love with that person, or like I wanted the dust to settle or something. So it was more about, okay, it's been long enough now. We can delve back into this, and it starts off with Home Tonight because that was the first song I wrote, and then it kind of just I was thinking about what order and how to put these songs into any order, and I ended up just going with chronological order because I felt, well, we're talking about, leaving one part of my life and coming home, so we'll just go through the next motion of what happens. And yeah, it wasn't too strategic. It was just as it happened.
So when you say you protected these songs for a while, was that an instinctual thing? So you felt that you couldn't let them out into the world, or was it more of a intellectual thing of, oh, I don't think I should?
No, I think it was emotionally wasn't quite ready. Um, and I guess too, it just takes, so by the time I probably was ready, then it's like, I went into the studio this time last year. So it's a full year kind of in the process of having recorded them, mixing them, and then doing the releases. So I was probably ready a year before that, which is it's just the timeline that it really takes. I mean, I see people that can put out music really quickly, and um I cannot do that. And I have admiration for someone who can do it faster. But yeah, it's a slower process.
Yeah, I think it also depends on just having the means and the access and all those sorts of things. It may not
Yeah.
necessarily be because you don't have the music that's there to release, but
Yeah.
also some things take time. Yeah,
Yeah.
they've got to um, marinate, I think is the word I often use.
Yeah, I
Um,
think too, like talking about these songs, if it was too close to the time of them being written, it would have been so much harder to talk about. Like it's been nicer just to come at them without so much. I feel I still have emotion attached to the songs, but I'm a little bit sort of stepped back from them now, which is good.
yeah. And so does it feel therefore in putting out the EP, you're like, all right, I've closed off that portion. And then in terms of what you've been working on since then, are there some songs that are ripening, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, there definitely is. And I can almost see a new sort of theme emerging. Yeah, where I've done that portion of my life. I think maybe now the next one might be a little bit more introspective, perhaps. I've noticed sometimes in my songwriting, I've in the past told the story of like, this is what happened and this person, and it's kind of sometimes seems a bit more outward, but I'm noticing a bit of a shift back in with certain songs. And so that could be interesting to explore. And I think too, um, I think I might want to start to unpack maybe some of my relationships with expectations. That could be another shift. I'm seeing that pop up a bit.
That's a big one. Because of course the sole cause of disappointment is expectation, but they're
Yes.
very hard to shed.
We'll see how we go.
So at the time we are speaking, you're in Nannup because you are about to play the Nannup Music Festival and you have an extensive WA tour planned. You're going to Karratha, you're going south, and And then you're going to be back in Broome at the end of it in May. So I'm guessing you're going to be away from Broome all that time.
Yeah, pretty much. I've left just after New Year's, really. We drove down and I've done the East Coast tour part and then Southwest. And so I'm just staying put. It worked out kind of better just to be here for that time period, as opposed to trying going up and back. And so I'm just spending this time on the road and seeing how it feels, I guess, getting a feel for road life. And so far, I'm really loving it. And I'm not yet missing home. I think it's that thing of I've spent so much time at home, that now I'm like, okay, you're there. I know you're there, but I'll come back when I'm ready.
Yeah. How easy or hard was it to set up this tour?
Oh my goodness, really hard. It was pretty hard. I think being in my comfort zone and in the little bubble of Broome for so long made it that much harder to really even just so the logistics of planning hard, but for me to get to the point where I was ready to leave, that was probably a big shift. But I'm really glad I had help from two incredible women who, go under the Sad Cowgirls tour banner, and they've pretty much made this able to happen in a way. But it was just so much of that behind the scenes and things I had to learn that I've never been good at systems, but I had to get quite good at systems, and luckily I had someone able to show me. But yeah, it was rough.
Well, I think it is a huge thing to be able to, to have to organize your own dates. So yes, it is great when someone can help you out, because that the inclination to be contacting venues and chasing people up and all those sorts of things are often antithetical to you being an artist.
Yeah. Well, even with like someone else booking the dates, there's still been so much to keep track of, even with that, because obviously I had the help with the dates booking, but I've taken over the kind of tour management of it. And so there's still so much that you're doing that I'm like, I could not, how would I have managed to book the dates on top of this? But I'm sure people do manage, and it's just that really being organized and having good systems is what I'm learning. So I think this tour is really teaching me that, and it's going to be a lifelong lesson. It actually has helped me get my finances in order. That's been the best part. Keeping track of spendings.
Well, there you go. Unexpected benefit. Sounds like. So the last show is the hometown show on May the 2nd at Divers Tavern in Broome. Now, I'm wondering why you chose that venue in particular. Is it a usual haunt for you?
Well, it's always hard for me to decide which venue, but I picked Divers for a single launch that I had last year for Angel, and it was just such a good turnout, and it was such a beautiful night. I just decided that that's now my preferred place, and it's kind of a good venue in that it can fit maybe like 600 people, but it feels full enough with one or two. So you've got this leeway of, okay, I don't have to fill it to feel full. And it can work with smaller amounts of people as well. And not always like not underselling myself, but I don't want to have that pressure of you have to fill the space. It's like we can make it feel nice still with just the people that really want to be there.
Yeah. Well, anyone who lives in Broome or is visiting Broome on the 2nd of May, there is a show to go to, and all your tour dates will be on your website. I'll also put them in the show notes with this episode or interview, I should say. Adele, I'm going to leave it there because you have a festival to play, and it was lovely to talk to you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Sophie. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and I really appreciate you talking to me again.
See you soon. Bye.